Hi, welcome to episode 288 of The Corner of Knit and Tea. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffyk on Ravelry, Fluffykira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my handspun yarns and some of my patterns. And we have a Ravelry group also called The Corner of Knit and Tea. Hi, how are you? It is Monday, July 27th. It is slightly cooler here today, which is nice. We are gearing up for a week of rain, and we're only going to be in the 80s rather than in the 90s plus a heat index. So I am looking forward to a slightly cooler week. I hope that you are doing well, that you have been enjoying some crafting time. We are in kind of what I consider the dog days of summer. We have, of course, passed the longest day, and the days are moving towards slightly shorter, but they're still pretty long, and it's still late, and we are almost done with July. I can hardly believe it. This year has been so strange. I think about things like Christmas and New Year's, and they feel simultaneously 10 years ago, and like I cannot believe we are already more than halfway through the year. I know that come August and September, the sweater bug is going to kick in for me because it always does. I start thinking about cooler weather and wanting to knit anything and everything. So I am somewhat gearing up for that, looking forward to that. I actually have a bunch of stuff off the needles today, which is nice. I had a really productive week. I think I just had things that were right at the perfect spot to kind of really dig in and finish them. And then I have a bunch of new cast-ons and things sort of waiting in the wings. So our week was pretty good. Like I said, I got lots done. It was hot. We stayed indoors. We did not do a lot this weekend. You know, our pattern basically is we're staying home, watching lots of media, watching movies, YouTube videos. We watched a really cool documentary series called Home Game on on Netflix this weekend. And it's all about sports that are played in different nations that have kind of a cultural heritage in the nation, and it was actually really interesting. Each episode was only about 30 minutes, and I think there were about 8 of them, and so I can definitely recommend it. You saw some really interesting things like free diving in the Philippines. Let's see what else. Wrestling in India. There were water buffalo races. There are just some really kind of amazing and fun things. Even if you're not sports minded, it was kind of interesting. So I think that's about all the news that I have to report from here. So let's get into the podcast. Today I am drinking, it is called Ashby's, and it is apricot tea, and I received it in a package a while back. Actually what I did this week was I was feeling a little bit scattered, and I went and gathered up all of my tea bags from various places and put them in one big glass jar that I have, that I actually got from Republic of Tea a while ago. And so I put them all in one place so that now if I want a tea bag, I can just go straight there. And then my loose leaf tea is still kind of all over. But this time I decided to drink apricot tea, and I am drinking it in my tea time mug. It was from Anthropologie. It was several years ago, and it just cracked me up. And for a Monday, it's kind of perfect. Ooh, that's delicious, and that's super hot too. So I'll be drinking that in a little while, but that was great. So let's talk about what I finished this week. I am thrilled that I finally finished my Ripple Not So Crop Top. I checked, and I cast this on at the very end of March, so it took me 4 months to finish this, which is sad because I wanted it to be a super quick knit. As you may remember, I had a few issues with this one, none of which were really the pattern. They are mostly my own. So this is the Ripple Crop Top by Jessie Made Designs, and it is for a crop top with short sleeves and a deep V-neck. And I decided that I wanted mine to not be so much of a crop top because I just didn't feel like I wanted to share my stomach. That is one of those areas that's probably the only area on me that I really just don't care to share. And so I decided I wanted to knit it longer. And in the original iteration, I believe my size called for 5.5 or 6 inches before breaking for the sleeves, and I went ahead and knit 10 before. It is knit in the round up until you get to the armholes, and then you separate for front and back, work them separately, join at the shoulders, and then knit your sleeves. I worked 10 inches until I separated for the sleeves, and then I knit the top more or less as written. I don't want to give away too much of the pattern, but it calls for the back to be longer than the front, which creates kind of a dipped hem so that the back is lower than the front. I did not do that when I knitted originally, but I did knit to the length prescribed. And what happened when I put it on was it was too long for my torso. The V was downright obscene, and I knew that I would really never wear it. And so my first thought was, oh, maybe I can just undo the shoulders and pull back a little bit and I'll be fine. But when I did that, then it was too short and it showed too much of my stomach. So unfortunately, what I had to do was pull out the fronts and backs and go back to right where I broke for the sleeves and knit more. And that is at the point that I set it aside and was like, ugh, I just can't deal with this right now. And then I had other sample projects come in and other things that I wanted to do, and it just languished. But I would really, really like to wear this summer because it is a fun turquoisey color, and I really just wanted this top to wear. So this week I decided that was it. I was going to finish it this past week. I was going to get it done. I had a break in my schedule where I had finished samples, but I didn't have new ones yet. And so I just buckled down and did it. I ripped all the way back to, I had joined at the shoulders. I had not picked up for the sleeves yet. I ripped back to where the armholes were. I knit an additional 4 inches. So my body is 14 inches. So more regular sweater length before dividing for front and back. And this time I drastically modified the armholes. I only knit them for about 7.5 inches. And I did the same for front and back, no extra on the back. And that, it fits perfectly. I put it on the other night and I was super, super thrilled. Before I did the sleeves, I of course put it on and I was super thrilled. It fits really nicely. It is a really flattering knit to a whole variety of body types. And if you want to knit yourself a crop top, I encourage you to do so. That is one of those things that I just didn't want. And I encourage you to also play with the armhole size, and figure out where you want this to hit on your body. There is, because of the ribbing, this is a nice, it's not super tight, it's not skin tight, but the ribbing gives it a nice kind of fitted factor that will mold to your body. And so there isn't a lot of shaping in the garment, which means that it's fairly easy. You just have to decide how far you want to knit, and then at the armhole you just have to decide how much space you really want to leave yourself. It's written for a very deep armhole, but I decided that I wanted to tighten it up somewhat, so I did so. And then I knit, the sleeves called to be 4.5 inches, and I knit, I think, about 5 inches just so they went just a smidge longer, and that is where I'm at. So this has not been blocked yet. It needs to be blocked. Let's talk about the yarn. The yarn is, and I have it right here, it is from Yarn Geek, who I love, and it is the Rocketeer base, which is merino cashmere nylon. It's an 80-10-10, and she names her colorways after geeky women, so famous women in science or writers, and this colorway is Vonda N. McIntyre, who is a science writer, a sci-fi writer. I used just under 2 skeins, I would say like 1 3/4 skeins. You can do it in far less, except that I lengthened my body quite a bit, which is why I needed more. I had 3 skeins, so I still have 1 left over that I will do something fun with, but well, I think I used about maybe 1.75, maybe a little bit less. I might have used 1.5. Because I've got this, and then I've got a few smaller balls left over from where I had to rip out and re-knit. So this stuff will go into my scrap yarn blanket, and then I will do something with this one. I'm not sure. Maybe it will be hat and mittens for one of the kids or something fun. It's super squishy. And I really love it. And all this needs is a good blocking. It will block out the sleeves a little bit. I'm not super concerned about giving this a huge blocking because it is ribbed, and I do want it to kind of be, I don't want to say clingy, but I want it to give it some form. So I don't really need to, you know, block it severely, but I will wash it and block it. And I am happy that after 4 months, this is off the needles. It is a beautiful turquoise with pops of pink and purple, and I just think it's really summery and fun. It's not quite my color. I think it's a little bit pale to be like perfect for my color. I generally do better with bright gem tones, but I really do like it, and this is just, it's such a fun top, and I probably will knit another one at some point because I do really like the way it fits. So this is the Ripple. Mine is a not so crop top, but it is the Ripple crop top by Jessie Made Designs. It is a wonderful pattern. I would encourage you to purchase it, and you can customize it. You can add longer sleeves. You can do all kinds of things. And the customizations, like I said, are really easy. It's just length and trying it on as you go. So that is my first WIP, and I've sort of been joking. I had, before this was done, 4 sweater WIPs in various stages of disarray that I have picked up and put down over the last year or two, which is actually very not like me. Usually I work a project through to completion, but for some reason I just have gotten caught up in the sweater WIPs. So I am very, very likely, or very, very happy to say that this one is off the needles, and now I only have 3 to go back to. And I will be going back to them in the next few months, so we'll talk about that as they come up, but that one is done. The second thing that I finished this week are my Christmas socks. And I know I didn't have much done on these last week, and I actually even have a story to tell about that, but these are sport weight socks, and I have a size 6.5 foot, so I actually cranked through these this week, and these are my Christmas socks. They may not look traditionally like what you think of when you think of Christmas. These are Hello Yarn, her fat sock base, but they are in the colorway Fruitcake, and so I thought that qualified them to be Christmas socks. As you may notice, the colors are just slightly different. I'm guessing they were slightly in different places in the dye pot. This one has a little bit more purple, and this one has a little bit more brown in it. It's just a little bit lighter. I notice it just a little bit when they're together. I don't mind, I do notice it, so if they look slightly different to you, this one definitely is slightly darker than this one. So these are, last week when I talked to you, I was using David Schultz's David Schultz's Toe Up, I think it's called Sock Cookbook, it might be called Sock Recipe, and basically it is this great pattern where you take your gauge swatch and you take and you figure out what your gauge is with any yarn you have, and you take some measurements of your foot, and you can work a sock from toe up with a gusset and heel flap. And I got through the gusset and heel flap and realized I had clearly I'm having issues today. I had knit the foot a little bit too long for my foot, and then B, the gusset and heel flap, for some reason, when I knit them from the toe up, they don't fit as nicely when I knit them from the top down. And I don't understand why that is, because it's essentially the same mechanism. I mean, it's worked slightly differently in reverse, but not enough that it really should be an issue. Although I guess I do a slip stitch heel, and I don't do that when I knit the toe up sock gusset, so that would actually make it a little bit bigger. Things I'm figuring out as we're sitting here. Anyway, I debated whether or not to keep the socks and make them for my sister, who has a slightly larger foot than I do, or whether I was going to rip them out. And ultimately I looked at the yarn, and the yarn is not superwash. It is merino, but it is not superwash, and that made my decision for me, because these days my sister has 2 young kids, and so I do not give her anything that cannot go in the washing machine. So I decided to rip them out and make them for me, and I decided that so the reason you would want to knit socks from the toe up, other than you might find it enjoyable, is that when you knit socks from the toe up, you can, if you have divided your skein in half, or if, like I was working with 2 separate skeins that were, well, technically they were, I think, 70 grams. If you want to use up all your yarn and basically knit yourself knee socks, you can do that when you start from the toe up, because you don't have to worry if you have enough left for the foot. You just keep knitting until you're done with the cuff. So that is the practical reason to knit toe-up socks. I have decided that unfortunately I am a top-down girl. I went to knit my socks from the cuff all the way down to the toe. So actually, to be honest, I knit both socks this week because I completely ripped out the progress that I had last week and redid them this week. So this is a top-down sock. I did a 2x2 ribbed cuff for about 10 rows. I knit until I was happy with the leg. I did a slip stitch, heel flap, and gusset, and I tried a trick that you can't really see it because the yarn is variegated, but I actually did a couple garter stitches at the edge of each heel flap, and that is something that I heard about and noticed in the Gentle Knitter podcast. She knits all of her socks with a couple garter stitches at the edge, and she said she does that because then it makes it super easy to pick up her stitches for the gusset. And she was right, it totally does. So I may be adopting that now, but that is the one modification. And then I knit a straight foot and knit a fairly rounded toe. Just did my decreases fairly quickly down there. So these are my Christmas socks, and the reason that's important is because we have a make-along going on in the group right now, which is Christmas in July. Now, July is almost over, but we decided to extend it through August 31st, so it's Christmas in July and August. If you have holiday yarn that you would like to turn into socks, and you can do that either crocheting or knitting, you are welcome to join in the Ravelry group. There is a thread in there, and unfortunately, if Ravelry does not work for you right now, which I completely understand, just go ahead and tag me in your projects on Instagram, and I will include you. There will be a prize draw at the end, so I will include you in the prize draw. And like I said, this is just about knitting some Christmas socks early in the year because who doesn't love Christmas in July? And also, I never get around to actually knitting my holiday socks in December. So I wanted to have a nice new pair of holiday socks this year, and these are my Fruitcake Socks. Again, the yarn was Fat Sock by Hello Yarn, and I knit these on US 2s, which are 2.75 millimeter, I believe. They're either 2.75 or 3.0. I can never remember because Addie does things weird, and their US 2s are actually 3.0, but I think it's 2.75, and I knit these on my Knitter's Pride Zings, because that is the set that I have in 2s. You know what? I might have knit them in 2.5s, which would make it a 3.0. Yes, details on my project page and linked in the show notes. So, with that done, I sort of have nothing on the needles. And I say that because, of course, that's a big joke. I still have my crochet blanket in progress. I still have those 3 sweaters that are in various stages. But I decided to go ahead and set myself up for some of what's coming. So the first thing that I decided to do is pull aside a skein of sock yarn so that I can knit socks for the kids. I am participating in Woolly Wonka Fibers 100 Days of Socks Cal. I double dipped for these socks, but now I am going to move on and knit socks for the kids and maybe socks for my family and maybe use up some of my hand spun. I have ambitious plans and I don't know if I will get to any of them. This week, my plan is to knit socks for the kids. I don't know if I can get pairs for both of them done, but I should be able to get at least one pair done. Roxy is 6.5, almost 7, and Miles will be 4. And I am using some sock yarn from 2 If by Hand. Unfortunately, they are no longer in business. And you know what? I have very little information about this because I took the tag out. But this is something about Perky or Academy, or I will find the colorway for next week. But it is like a bright rainbow colorway. It's got pinks and oranges and greens and yellows and blues and purples. And it's just kind of fun. And it is caked up because I used it to knit when I released my Snug as a Mug sock pattern. So this is going back a ways. When I released my Snug as a Mug mug sock pattern, I used this for that. So I probably used like 20 grams of it for that, which should leave me with plenty for socks for the kids. This is superwash merino, so I'm sure it will wear well and it can go into the washing machine. So that is what I'm going to use to cast on socks for the kids this week, and I will use US Zeros 2.25 millimeters. Now I'm completely doubting myself. I think it's 2.0 millimeter, isn't it? These are, yes, 2.0 millimeter US 0. These are Knitter's Pride Zings, and I have a DPN set from them. So I use those quite frequently on socks, and these are the fun pink ones. So that is what I will be working on this week, and if I am great and finish both pairs of socks, fabulous. I doubt that will happen, but that is what I'm going to be working on this week. I pulled another knit out, and I don't know if I'm going to cast this on this week, but I decided to show this to you anyway. Towards the beginning of staying at home, there were lots of yarn stores who were doing all kinds of kits and who have been drop shipping kits from yarn producers. And there is a yarn store in Los Angeles, which technically was not my yarn store when I lived there, because actually that yarn store has since closed. But one of the co-owners of the yarn store that closed has actually opened up a new store, and it's not new anymore. It's been around for a while. It is called The Knitting Tree Los Angeles. Some of you may have shopped there. I really like it, and Annette, Annette owns it with her husband Bruce, and then they also have a silent partner, and they have a really great team over there and lovely selection. I always visit when I go home, but Annette used to own Amano Yarns, which was on Venice Boulevard for a long time. It has been closed for at least 10 years now. It closed shortly after I moved to Kansas City, which is now 12 and a half years ago. So we are talking ancient history, but I love supporting her because I consider her my hometown yarn store, even if technically the yarn store that I used to work at and knit at is gone. Anyway, they were promoting a bunch of different kits that you could order, and I really liked the look of this pattern, so I went ahead and ordered the kit, and I decided that I'm going to knit this shawl up for my aunt, who is a nurse and has been working at crazy hours in this pandemic. So this is the broderie shawl designed by Allison Green, and it reminds me a little bit of the night shift shawl, but a lot of the work is done by color changing yarns. So this is a, it looks like an asymmetrical triangular shawl, and it looks like it's a little bit of color work and potentially some slip stitch, but a lot of it is the yarn doing the work, and the yarn called for in the pattern is Barocco Millefiori Light. It calls for 2 balls of a main color and 1 ball of a contrast color, and I just ordered a kit in kind of dark jewel-toned colorways. See, there is a theme, and actually my aunt really likes these colorways. So I'm going to, I think, do this one for her. So my 2 colorways are... Oh, and of course they don't come with names. 6859 and 6883. So one is kind of reds and purples and pinks. And then one is kind of like a bronzy gold with teals, and then it's also got purples and things in there. So this one is my main color. I have 2 of these. And Millefiori Light is a 50% wool, 50% acrylic. And let's see, care instructions: hand wash in cool water, lay flat to dry, made in Italy. It is 350 yards to 100 grams. So that puts it into, I think, a sport weight yarn. It looks like it is 24 stitches to the inch on a US 5. So yeah, I'm sorry, it's 6 stitches to the inch. That's weird. Yeah, 6 stitches to the inch in knitting gauge on a US 5. So I'm thinking it's, actually probably a fingering weight yarn. I'll have to double check, but these are the 2 colors, and again, I'm going to be knitting the broderie shawl. The kit was really nice. It came with, like I said, my 3 skeins of yarn, my pattern, and there's a sticker in there, and I find the Barocco yarns are super affordable. I think the entire kit was around $40. Which to get all the yarn and a pattern for is really amazing. And honestly, I didn't necessarily order it with my aunt in mind. I ordered it just thinking it was a pretty kit and I wanted to support the store. And then I just decided that given that it was like very jewel toned, my aunt loves purples. And I think it will be lightweight and wool acrylic should be fine. She lives in Southern California. My guess is she'll only use it during the winter months, but it would be a nice kind of just a little extra layer of warmth. So my plan is to do that one for her, and I'll cast that on at some point. I don't know if that will be this week. So let's sort of segue into, oh, there's one final thing, and then I will talk about kind of why I may or may not cast that on this week. Another project that is sort of waiting in the wings for me, and I don't know when I'll pick it up, but the other thing that I thought about was I actually ordered a skein of purple yarn, and this is coming across very, very violet to me. It almost reads more blue, although there are speckles of purple in there. This is called The Sky Was All Purple. It was dyed sort of in honor of Prince, and it is from Onyx Fiber Arts. This is my first time using her yarns, and this is absolutely squishy and wonderful. It is her worsted weight, 218 yards per 100 grams, 100% superwash merino. And I ordered this, even though it is worsted weight, I ordered this to knit the Empower scarf, which is by Casapinka, and it is part of the Empower People 2020 to get out the vote. And that is a free pattern. You can Google the hashtag or look on Instagram for the hashtag EmpowerPeople2020, or go check out Casapinka, or Lady Di Yarns is the one who is sort of spearheading the effort. And there is a knit pattern, a crochet pattern, and a sewn pattern. And this is just supposed to remind people to go out and vote, to encourage others to register to vote, because voting in our November election is going to be so important this year, given everything that is going on in our country right now. So I did, like I said, and the encouragement was to also purchase your yarns to make your Empower People scarf from BIPOC makers. So, and that is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So I decided to give Onyx Fiber Arts a try. Their Lady Di Yarns has a huge list of makers that you can look for. Everybody's doing purple yarn right now, or if you have purple yarn in your stash, you can do it. The pattern, at least the knitting pattern that I have looked at, is mostly a garter stitch triangle. It is a fairly simple knit. It is just supposed to be, like I said, a reminder of how important it is to vote and to encourage others to do the same. So I will cast on for that at some point. I expect that to be a quick project, but I did want to show you that. That's a little bit of stash enhancement and something that will be on my needles soon. So now let's talk about spinning. When we last talked, I was showing you a beautiful braid of Hello Yarn fiber in Corriedale. It was the June Fiber Club, I believe. I got it at the beginning of July, and it is called Midsummer, and it was pinks and browns and blues and this icy blue, and it is Corriedale, and I decided I wanted to knit myself a pair of socks, and so I am spinning it fractally. I divided the braid in half, and so half has been spun right here on this bobbin, and I spun this half straight through, so long color repeats, just as is, and then this half I am actually going to spin in very short color repeats. My hope is actually that I will be able to make two roughly matching socks. So that is the plan for this. However, this has been a little bit waylaid because I actually had some sample work come in. And so I have been working on that, and I thought I'd show you just a little bit of that. I am making more chickens for the City Girl farm, and I will put that in the show notes just so you can see what that is. It's an art project that I've been working on for a while, and I both spin and knit for them, and then they put the chickens together. They are absolutely handmade art pieces. And so what I have been doing is spinning a lot of merino. I have been spinning singles. They're kind of, they're definitely like worsted to bulky weight, and I have been spinning them on my Ashford Joy. And this has been a process. This is the third or fourth time that I am spinning for this particular purpose. And basically what I am doing is I am spinning singles, and I'm trying to make them kind of thicker singles, and a little bit rustic, because we're using them to create feathers that cover the chickens that we are crafting. And this has been a real exercise in learning to spin again for me, because I have sort of my standard spinning style. I tend to spin worsted, which is fairly smooth, all the fibers in one direction. I usually use combed top. It is dyed, and I like to spin, generally I spin in a way that produces maximum barber pull. I usually spin 2-ply. I ply from the inside and outside of the ball so I can maximize my yardage, and I usually end up with a default of about sport weight. That can vary depending on the fibers, sometimes a little thicker, sometimes a little thinner. But I have my go-to spinning. This has been an exercise in learning control. Spinning thicker, trying not to over twist my singles, which as you can see, I'm still pretty bad at. They are still, this is post-bath, this is pre-bath. So you can see it's a lot worse pre-bath than it is post-bath. It does relax, but there still are some coils and kinks in there, and they still are over twisted. This is a work in progress for me. The other thing that I'm not used to is because we are using these for chicken feathers, I can also spin slightly a little bit more rustically. I'm not as concerned if my fiber is a little bit thick and a little bit thin, because that creates kind of no two feathers are the same, which is really sort of more true to real life. Some of the chickens that we create, and again, you can see these at the City Girl farm, they are art pieces. Some of the chickens we create look a lot like actual real chickens, and some are definitely more artistically inspired. But so I have been learning to spin differently. Since I spoke to you last week, I have spun, at this point, I want to say, well, so that was 5. I've spun another 8 to 10 ounces of fiber. So I'm spinning these real rough. This one was maybe 3 ounces, 4 ounces. No, this one was 2.8 ounces, and this one is 2 ounces. And I'm spinning lots of little bits of color because we are creating a chicken based on a particular style of quilt. And so I have a picture of the quilt, and they sent me all these different colors plus white. So that I can knit up the feathers, and then we're going to kind of mix and match them and make them look like a pieced quilt. So that is what I'm working on this week. That is also why I have not cast on a ton of things, because I need to be knitting chicken feathers this week in addition to my spinning. So my guess is I will be knitting for another couple weeks, and I will spin for at least 1 more week, if not 2, based on the fiber that I have. So you'll see some of these kinds of things. I'll bring some of these to show you, but I will not be finishing up that sock yarn for a little bit. So that is one thing, and then the other thing is that I need to go to my UPS mailbox today because more yarn has come in for another sample. So now you can see why I have a few things waiting in the wings, and I'm not exactly sure which I will cast on. I think this week will be focused on the kids' socks, and then I will do some chicken feathers and cast on for that new sample. So my guess is I will not get to the 2 other projects, the broderie shawl from Barocco or the Empowered People scarf this week. My guess is those will probably be in the next couple weeks. But of course I didn't have a ton to show you today, so I just thought I'd bring you some things and show you what's hanging out and kind of in the wings. And this past weekend I have been inspired to do 2 new sweaters. I know I should really finish one of the old ones first. I need to figure out what I'm going to do with those. And so, yeah. So I have another sweater I'd love to cast on. I want to knit a million more socks. So I have lots waiting in the wings. My knitting mojo is really ramped up. Spinning, you'll see a little bit less for a little while. But of course, that always happens to me after the tour. I spin like gangbusters during the tour, and then I kind of settle out for a little while when I'm done. So, 33 minutes in. Thank you for joining me this week. I hope that you have had a good week. I hope you and your family and friends are all healthy, that you are able to work or do what you need to do in the midst of everything in this world. You know, the weeks are heavy and there is lots going on in the world to bring everyone down. And I don't mean to be cheerful and show you all of my crafting and sort of, if I don't mention what's going on in the world, it is not, I feel like in some ways I'm sort of stepping over the chalk outline. Gosh, that's a terrible, I always say, okay, it's a terrible metaphor because of what is going on in the world right now. But you know, when somebody gets on and talks about nothing but cheerful things, and they do not talk about the thing that's like in the news this week or that's happening, and you feel like they're essentially, there's like a chalk outline of a body on the floor and everybody's just walking around it and not talking about it. That is the metaphor that I usually use. Of course, that is not appropriate right now because unfortunately so many people in the US are passing away from COVID-19. I hope that when I talk to you, you understand that I know that there's a lot going on in the world, and I am not trying to put a cheerful face on it and just keep knitting and ignore what's going on out there. I spend a lot of time reading. I spend a lot of time trying to support the causes that I believe in. And so I know that these weeks are heavy. I also find tremendous joy in my crafting and sometimes respite from the things that are hard to deal with. So when I say just keep knitting, I certainly don't mean let's go back to the knitting and forget about everything else. That is not what I mean at all. I do know that times are tough, and I hope that you are able to find a little bit of joy and stay healthy and I don't necessarily want to say prosper, but get by during these times, because I know that times are tough for so many people out there. I am so thankful that my husband and I can continue to work, that our families remain healthy, that I have beautiful craft supplies to keep me occupied indoors, and I realize how privileged I am and how lucky I am for that to be the case. So I will say, I hope that you are well. I hope you can find small moments of peace in your crafting, and I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks for joining me today, and I will say, as I always do, happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time.